Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, I have Nathan Hecht. He's the CEO and founder of Rodo. This is a new mobile app that allows consumers to purchase cars online and deliver a turnkey, one fixed fee price solution for dealers to sell cars. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Nathan, for dealers who are not familiar with Rodo, let's get a little thumbnail. How long have you been in business, and what motivated you to get into what we call online retailing of vehicles?
Sure. So Rodo was actually originally named Honker. Some dealers out there may be familiar with our old name. We rebranded about 8 months ago from Honker to Rodo. The business has been around for just over 3 years. We're based in New York. And the way I came to this is actually a personal experience. I was in the market for a vehicle about 3.5 years ago. I went to my local car dealership after seeing an advertisement. It was specifically for a Nissan Maxima. And I went to the local dealership and I said, hey, I'll have that car at this price that I had seen on the ad. And I quickly learned that it's not that simple to lease or finance a car in the U.S. So the dealer invited me in and sat me down and I filled out a credit application. I then learned the complexities of rebates and incentives and bank programs and so on and so forth, credit tiers and what have you. And by the time the process was done, for many hours sitting in the dealership, the price was not exactly what I had seen in the advertisement, because obviously there are terms and conditions that you're subject to in the ad. And the negotiation didn't exactly go the way I had thought. And I actually ended up spending some time in the dealership online as a tech entrepreneur, trying to do the same transaction that I was doing in the store on the internet. And I quickly found out that there were two things that were missing on the available online platforms. Number one, there was no place that I can see an actual monthly lease payment specific to me. So I saw a lot of these sort of advertised prices or MSRP pricing. And then the second thing was there was no place to actually complete an e-commerce-like transaction. And I was bewildered by it. So by the end of that day, after leaving the dealership, mind you, without a car, I quickly realized that there was an opportunity here. I was involved in some previous tech ventures, and I called up my team and I said, hey guys, we're going to build an app for consumers to lease a car. And that's where it began.
You know, I am aware of Honker, and I'm sure that dealers are as well. Honker was one of the early companies that were pioneering this idea of a personalized monthly payment. There are a number of companies out there today who absolutely believe that consumers shop by payment, and that the easier and more accurately we allow a consumer to understand what their true cost per month is, the faster they can make a decision. I know I'm a payment shopper in general. You know, I have an idea what I want to be paying for a car, and I'm not that picky. So it definitely applies to me. Nathan, we've been talking about digital retailing and this whole COVID-19 pandemic, which has significantly impacted the automotive community, has brought digital retailing to the forefront. Almost it's the perfect storm without being too glib about the damage that it is doing to the jobs and economy. Your model does all the heavy lifting, and for dealers who sign up for Rodo, you deliver them a customer who's ready to transact. But there are some dealers here that says, hey, I've put digital retailing software on my website. There are no true volume buyers that want to do the whole thing online. What are you seeing? What are you doing differently that you can give a dealer a ready to transact consumer where other digital retailing tools seem to be nothing more than a glorified payment calculator?
There are some very good and effective digital retailing tools that dealers can use for their website, and we're big fans of that. The underlying problem with that is A few things. Number one, the burden of acquiring the customer is still on the dealership. So they have to go out and however they advertise or market to consumers, they still need to do that, bring them to their website. Ultimately, the tool is very limited in what it allows the consumer to do. In most cases, end up as a lead in a BDC department and ultimately coming into the dealership. We looked at this completely differently. We set out to design a true e-commerce transaction where the burden of acquiring the customer is on us. And by the time the dealership receives an order from us, it is exactly that. It is extremely close to a completed lease transaction. So the customer sees an actual monthly lease payment on a specific VIN. They place an order. They upload their driver's license. They answer their credit questions. At that point, the deal gets sent to the dealership. They get a notification via text message to the person at the store that's handling it. We can drop it into their CRM. No DMS integration required at all. The person at the dealership who handles the transaction sees the vehicle worksheet, how we came up to the monthly payment and the due-it signing, a robust worksheet, including lender rebates, incentives, program, and so on and so forth. They have the consumer's credit because we did a soft credit pull on registration with the consumer. They have the vehicle that the customer is coming out of. They have trade information. Everything is digitally sent to the dealership. And then we like to say the dealer can complete the transaction in 3 clicks. They confirm inventory. They run, and the consumer gets a notification, hey, the dealership is processing your order. The vehicle is locked up for you. Now the dealer is running your credit. The dealer runs credit, gets an approval, denial. Assume that it's approved. Customer gets a notification, your credit has been approved. Please upload insurance. The consumer uploads a picture of their insurance card on the app. Again, it gets sent via our platform to the dealership. The dealership sees it, and they set the vehicle up for delivery. So this is a true e-commerce transaction from beginning to end versus just bringing in another lead into BDC. Ultimately, from the dealer's perspective, this is the fastest, easiest, least expensive transaction they will probably ever do. And from the consumer's perspective, it feels just as simple as if I'm ordering anything online.
Great. So Nathan, I'm going to ask you some tough questions here because I've been on the road for almost now 2 years talking about digital retailing, and I love the passion and the focus that you have to allow consumers to lease a vehicle completely online. So if we compare models a little bit without comparing companies, you charge the dealer only if the consumer buys, which is somewhat like the TrueCar model. The average dealer, I think, pays about $300 if a car is sold. They provide the opportunity and they say, listen, if you sell the car, you pay us. If you don't sell the car, you don't pay us. But one of the pushbacks from dealers have been, hey, some of those leads were new and incremental. We love them. But some of those leads were consumers who were an existing customer or recently engaging with our dealership. And TrueCar has had to deal with this idea of, well, if you've had direct communication on this vehicle within the last 30 days with the consumer, we're not going to charge you, or maybe it's a lower cost. Have you dealt with that situation where you are marketing, you are providing the leads, you are providing the customer, but they've also been recently in contact with a dealer? What happens in those situations?
So the answer is we've seen it. It's a very small, and I mean literally single-digit percentage points of our transactions at the moment. Again, the fundamental difference between us and the way TrueCar handled it is TrueCar would essentially go into your DMS or somehow get a report from you that they can match up against, and they were getting paid regardless. In our case, we are not doing that, and we are rather liberal in telling dealers, hey, if this was a prior customer or a customer that you already are working with, then we will not charge you. It is not a matter of policy for us just yet. We are waiting to see, what the percentage of volume that actually equates to before we firmly set a policy around it. But over the last few years that we've been live, we've been rather liberal. One thing I can tell you with certainty is we will not go into the DMS or otherwise ask for reports and err on the side in our favor. We will not do that. We think that there are other areas of revenue for us, some of which we've already initiated, others that are coming down the pike shortly, that will make up for the small difference where the dealer will say, hey, this was a prior customer, and we don't get paid. So we're erring on the side of the dealership for now.
Great. Now, you mentioned specifically Rodo today is going out, you're spending the marketing dollars, you're getting consumers to download the app, you're creating a brand promise that this is the easiest way to lease a vehicle. And for me, I've always leased vehicles for the majority of my adult life. And leasing is definitely an easier piece than, say, financing or used cars because of, some of the unique things that go along with that. Do you have any intention in the near term to expand from just leasing to do financing of vehicles?
It's funny that you bring that up. We have been developing Rodo for finance for basically the last 12 months. We are within weeks of announcing Rodo for finance. We're very excited about it. We think that the timing of it is perfectly timed for by the time consumers do come back in mass to acquire a new vehicle, God willing, in the next few weeks, for us to cover the entire market, not just leasing, which is anywhere between 25 and 30%, will cover the entire 100%, give or take, of new car sales. So you heard it here first. We have not announced that yet.
Great.
Pardon me, but we will be announcing it within the next few weeks.
Great. So I have another question. Every time I post something about digital retailing, anytime I talk about changing the retail thinking, I have different folks that seem to be like, I don't know if you call the word creative stalkers or cranky, and they claim nobody calculates the monthly payment as accurately as me. Like, Brian, why don't you have me on my show? Because, everyone else is full of crap and they say they can calculate payments, but we're the only one that can do it accurately and everyone else is lying. I have to address that with you. So, Nathan, what confidence can you give dealers that your tech stack and your data integrations and your algorithms are the best in the business in creating a transparent and accurate monthly lease payment for consumers so the dealer doesn't get in heat and the dealer isn't losing gross?
This is as you rightly mentioned, a sensitive topic for a lot of us in the industry that are working on price calculations. Here's what I can say. Up until a year ago, we were licensing, without mentioning company names, we were licensing said calculator or otherwise desking technology from some of the existing businesses, or what we call legacy businesses. They've been around in the auto industry for some time. We have since then, over the last year, built our own technology. It's built around machine learning and natural language processing, where we have a system that is capable of doing things that the other systems aren't. And I know there are terms such as penny perfect and so on and so forth. All I can say is I believe that our technology is superior to everything else that's out there. And I can get into a tiny bit of detail. We can apply a rebate or incentive to even the VIN specific level. We can apply what are known as VPN discounts, pardon me. So if you work at Citigroup and there's an additional $500 discount for you because you're an employee of Citigroup, we can apply that in real time. We have a proprietary credit matrix that appropriately tiers you with the credit tiers of the specific lenders. I don't think that there is a lender in the country down to the credit unions and beyond, including the national lenders, that we don't have access to their programs and so on and so forth. And because this is a modern system that was built for the internet, built for the weight of the internet, I think it's superior vis-a-vis some of the other desking systems that were built for dealers to manually key in, consumers' information. It's just that the architecture is different, and the way that it was designed is very different. And I challenge companies or dealerships to come back and point out, when things are wrong, and we stand behind it. Will I say it's 100% perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it's as good as it gets.
Great. And that's fair, Nathan. I think all dealers understand that there are some unique challenges in our business. And one of the other things that people have told me, I know that Cars.com has a program called Auto Corrected, because what they found out was about 30% of all the cars on Cars.com which are fed from dealers DMS, are missing, detailed descriptions of what's on the code, meaning that the dealer's own, DMS is incorrectly, merchandising the vehicle, which of course impacts price and the descriptions that show. So something like Auto Corrected is an amazing tool that actually fixes dealers' own inventory. There's a lot of data hygiene around this that's important. But what I do like is that you're doing the heavy lifting. You're going to get consumers to use Rodo. You're going to market. You're going to integrate the dealer's inventory. You're going to take care of all the, in a sense, transactional information that a consumer needs to make a decision. And when they're ready to make the decision, you hand off that ready to go consumer. What percent of the people, just as a general number, if you gave a dealer, hey, 20 Rodo customers, we're not going to call them leads because they're really making a commitment, how many of those out of the 20 would actually end up buying a car?
90% across the board. By the time the order gets to the dealership, 9 out of 10 transactions are completed. We do not send a transaction to the dealer until everything is verified, and including the consumer. So everything from the consumer's identity, fraud checks, driver's license, credit information. By the time the dealer gets a notification that they have a new Rodo lease, it's very well fleshed out. The 10% that does not complete are the scenarios where the vehicle isn't available. So similar to like when you walk into a car dealership, you're looking at the blue minivan, the booth next to you is looking at the blue minivan, only one of you are going to get the blue minivan. Those instances happen. And because we have about 165,000 vehicles right now in the markets that we operate in, we have a real-time view of inventory from close to 1,500 dealers now that are on the platform. So in many instances, even when the vehicle is not available at one specific dealer and there isn't something similar that the customer can be put into, then we can move it to another dealer in real time. So it really is just a very, very small percentage. And in addition to that, you sometimes have a customer who changes their mind at the last minute. That stuff happens. And finally, there are instances where a price calculation is off, where a rebate was misapplied, or in the rare scenarios where a dealer says, I cannot complete this transaction today for whatever reason. Yeah. So 9 out of 10 times by the time the transaction gets there, it is completed.
Great. Now, one of the other questions, and I told you I'd ask some tough questions. There are dealers who tell me, Brian, I've tried digital retailing, but I deal with a lot of subprime people. And these digital retailing tools choke or get screwed up or don't handle properly. I can give you tons of descriptions. Or the bigger fear is that the digital retailing tool just basically says, you're shit out of luck, and I know that's an extreme and no tool says that, but it's the dealers thinking like, man, if I put people through digital retailing, no way they can handle subprime. How do you respond? Obviously, you're not passing somebody to the dealer unless many things have been validated. But what's happening to the consumers that are in that subprime credit level?
Great question. So we qualify our customers on registration. So once you download the app, the first thing you need to do is register. At that registration point, we're doing a soft credit check with Experian, with consumer consent, and we're pulling your credit report. We're also, and at that point, you're sort of categorized. If we see a customer come in subprime, 580 credit score, what have you, a variety of things happen. The first thing that happens is we prompt them for a cosigner. So before they even place an order, we're notifying them by sort of qualifying these consumers. We're saying, hey, we notice that your credit is somewhat challenged. Do you have someone who can sign for you? Because leasing is a prime or near prime type transaction. If the customer doesn't respond to that, then the customer will be filtered out of the system, and they will only see inventory from dealers that have indicated to us on our back-end tool that they have subprime lenders that can still complete a transaction. And we both know those are few and far between.
That's right.
In addition to that, when we're doing the soft credit check, we're parsing the consumer's credit profile, and we're looking for prior auto history. There is a percentage of consumers that, although they're subprime, it might be temporary. And the one bill that they might be paying might be their automobile. So they may have missed their mortgage payment. They may not be paying their credit cards, which, by the way, now during this COVID crisis, we're going to see a ton more of this as we did during the financial crisis. If you're still making your auto payment, even though technically your credit score is low, you might still qualify. So as I mentioned, those are just a few things that go into our overall sort of algo at the very top of the funnel to qualify consumers. But to be fair, even with all of this, consumers certainly fall through the cracks, and every once in a while an order does get through where the customer will ultimately need to be declined. And we're looking for solutions around that as well. We think as the business grows and the ecosystem gets bigger, there's a lot of these consumers that we can either pass on to someone else who can handle for used. Once our finance business goes live in the next few weeks, we can move them into finance. They won't even see lease as an option, and so on and so forth. So by doing this for a few years, you learn a lot about what the funnel looks like and how to sort of move consumers into the right direction.
Great. Thank you, Nathan, and thank you for a really honest answer about that. Nathan, as we wrap up our interview, dealers who are interested in supplementing their sales flow with a Rodo subscription, if you hand a customer to a consumer that is ready to lease or soon ready to finance, and they purchase the car, you say 9 out of 10 of those are doing that now, which is an amazing high quality sales funnel. What's the charge to the dealer?
$399 per delivered vehicle once the vehicle is confirmed to be delivered.
So you're aligning your financial interests with the dealer's financial interests. The dealer sets up his banks and his programs, his pricing. So with your algorithm, they should be able to, the consumer, see a deal that the dealer can live with and the consumer is attracted to. So it's a win-win for all three parties.
Precisely. And I think that the way you just described it, Brian, I couldn't have done better myself in saying that this is a transaction that from beginning to end is controlled by the dealership. One of the things that I learned very early on when I stepped into the automotive industry was the dealer isn't going anywhere anytime soon. The dealer is an important part of our communities. The dealership just needs to evolve. So give the dealership the ability to move into sort of the 21st century, and the rest will take care of itself.
Nathan, one other thought that just came to my head, and this may be a controversial statement, but I'm not afraid to ask controversial questions either. It would seem to me, as Rodo grows, you have about 10% of the retail rooftops. Let's just think of the future when you start having 5,000 or 10,000 dealers on a web app that is completely transactional, that is OEM neutral. A consumer can find exactly what they want. They can lease or finance, and you're delivering transactions to the dealer. Let's just say that is a future state. You really become a marketplace. And of course, there's established marketplaces like Cars.com and Car Gurus and Auto Trader, but you're the first to really come out with an app, or one of the first, that is a marketplace for transactions, not a marketplace for leads or a marketplace for shopping. Was this a missed opportunity for the larger portals to see that they have to transition to an e-commerce play?
Look, we often step back and ask ourselves how, why the industry is asleep at the wheel. I mean, the fact that it took an outsider who had no auto experience and a tech team that had no auto experience to sort of recognize that there was a vacuum here and there was an opportunity is very interesting. That happens sometimes in technology specifically, where outsiders sort of recognize the voids. But to be fair, again, I'm not naive to think we're the only ones that are going to do this. We do have the luxury of being first to market in lease. We will probably be first to market in finance also. But the industry is in its embryonic stage. I think what COVID-19 has done for the industry and will continue to do going forward as society lives with the new reality is the evolution into a true e-commerce sort of digital transaction. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, but I still think it's early and young, and there will be many iterations of this until it gets absolutely perfect. And by the way, there is one other thing that we need to keep in mind, a critical point, which is the consumer. The consumer is still used to going into a car dealership in America. And when we hear dealers saying, we do studies, and 75% of consumers still come back and say they want to negotiate and they want to see and touch the vehicle prior to committing and all of that. I believe that, and we've done some of those studies ourselves, and it is true, in fact. But there was also a time where consumers only rented a vehicle from a Hertz or an Avis. Today, they're doing it from their neighbors on marketplaces online. There was a time where consumers, when you went on vacation or on a business trip, you only stayed in a Hilton or a Marriott. Today, there's Airbnb and many of their competitors and so on and so forth. So I believe we were already on the right track, but this crisis is probably the tipping point for the industry as a whole, for consumers and dealers alike, to adopt new technologies and perhaps think a little bit differently about the way they procure a vehicle, the way that they service their vehicle, the way that they finance the vehicle, and many other things that can be part of this ecosystem as the industry evolves. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, and there's a significant technology investment. I know some dealers think, man, here's another company coming in to be a middleman. But the truth of the matter is, an individual franchise dealer has a tremendously difficult time building the tech and reach that a mobile app has. I mean, think of all the creative people who are selling things on Amazon. What does Amazon really provide? A platform to easily transact. And so, yes, you're paying Amazon a fee for every piece of goods that your company sells through their platform, but you get the stability, the reach, the convenience, and all the other benefits to help fuel your business. So I think that the future is being rewritten. I agree with you that the COVID pandemic was the tipping point for dealers to think about retail. Consumers still love coming into the dealership, get it. But there was one time, you mentioned other things, there was one time when you always went to the grocery store for groceries. Now you're picking them up on the curb or having them delivered. There was a time where people loved going to bookstores and looking through the shelves, and now they're listening to podcasts or audiobooks. Things are changing because consumers want it faster, easier, mostly online, to save them time. And it looks like Rodo is another one of these opportunities to relook at how automotive retail is being delivered. So, Nathan, if someone wanted to learn more about how to sign up for Rodo in the markets, geographical markets that you're in and operating, where would they go and who would they call?
So it's rodo.com, RODO.com. There is a dealership tab on the website with some information about how the program works. It's extremely easy to sign up. A very simple agreement between our company and the dealership. No long-term commitments. You can turn on and turn off as you wish. All we need is an inventory feed from your standard inventory feed provider like a Vint Solutions or HomeNet or what have you. and then you get a username and password into the dashboard where you set your pricing, your geographic location, your lenders, and so on and so forth, and you're live on the system. We have dealers that contact us, on a Monday morning, and they're live on Tuesday. So in addition to that, they can email dealerdesk@rodo.com. That goes directly to our sales team. We have outside sales reps as well as an inside support team for our dealerships in the regions that we operate in. And I'd just like to point out that we have received inbound inquiries from dealers across the country, from the most remote areas to urban areas in markets that we're not in yet. And we are now opening up new markets due to the crisis. So don't hesitate to reach out. It's free to sign up. It's free to go live. You only pay us on a per delivered vehicle. So it's Rodo, RODO.com, or dealerdesk@rodo.com.
Well, Nathan, thank you for your time today. This is a hot conversation, obviously, what modern retail looks like. If this is the first time you're listening to one of my podcasts, you should know that every Monday I release a new podcast session, interviews with industry leaders, disruptors, technology that is helping modern retail evolution, and also challenging our industry to think differently about how to better serve consumers. So you can search for the Pash On podcast on the Apple Podcast channel, the Google Play Store, SoundCloud, my YouTube channel, or the native player, which is brianpash.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. I want to thank Nathan and his team for joining us today. And as we look forward to the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference in July in the Napa Valley, I just want you to know that we are pivoting some of the content to focus on digital retailing, marketing, merchandising, and workflows to help dealers pivot to a world in which we're now learning about, which is what happens when the consumer cannot just come in to the dealership. So make sure you check out digitalmarketingstrategies.org and get your team registered for that newly created July date that will allow everyone to make proper plans to attend. Thank you so much for sharing time with us today, and I'll see you next week on another podcast session.